This week I'm taking some of our favorite foods and getting a little bit creative and turning them into casseroles. Because this time of year it's fall, it's getting colder and colder, and casseroles are just so cozy and they're perfect for those days that you're not exactly wanting soup and you're wanting something a little bit heartier. And so I'm gonna take some of the flavors from those sorts of things and translate it into delicious, cozy, easy, cheesy, delicious casseroles that the whole family is gonna love. And most of it you can do in one pot. I'm also gonna be using some leftovers. So in the first recipe we're gonna do, I have some brown rice that's already in my fridge that I just pulled out and reheated. This one is gonna be super easy. The next one is gonna be a breakfast favorite. And then the other one I wanna show you is taking one of those classic fall soups that we love and turning it into a casserole. It's not that I always need a brand new idea. Sometimes you just need to get a little bit creative in the kitchen. And I love getting creative both in the kitchen and outside of the kitchen, especially this time of year. I just love all the fall decor and pumpkins and all the fun things. And that is why today's video is sponsored by Craftsy. Craftsy is an online resource and community for all things creative. So there's millions of different people who come on the platform and find creative inspiration, just advance their skills and master something new, or just learn a new skill along the way. They have more than 2,000 classes in some of the top categories for creative things like sewing, quilting, cake decorating, arts, baking. There's so much on there that it makes you want to take on like 5 new hobbies. And what I love is that the classes are broken down into easy to follow lessons by really friendly and great instructors. Lately, I took a lesson on how to make a bread wreath and a chocolate babka, which I think making bread wreaths is so fun, especially as we head into the holidays. It makes just like for beautiful different displays that you can make. And I took it by Jenny McCoy. She's an excellent instructor, and I love how she really showed me step by step how to do the braiding, because that is one thing that I have yet to master. There's even one coming up in October that's like a felt pumpkin garland, which I think is perfect to make with my kids. So if you want to check out Craftsy too, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in my description box are going to get a full year of premium membership to Craftsy for only $1.49. This is valid for new members only, so make sure you take advantage of it, and thanks again to Craftsy for sponsoring today's video. This first recipe, you're not going to believe how easy it is, but it's taking one of our favorite classic foods, which is a white chicken chili, and instead of making like a chili or a soup, we're turning it into a casserole. So it's going to be one of those things that my family gobbles up because it's so cozy, but it's still something different than soup too. Because I know it's easy in the fall to start making a ton of different soups, but I also love making casseroles because they're just so cozy. So I'm starting by taking 3 scallions and I'm gonna get them chopped up. And this is really the bulk of the prep work. I already have some chicken that I have cooked off in the Instant Pot. I just put that in there with some salt, some pepper, a little bit of chicken broth, and pressure cooked it. And then I'm gonna shred that up and we're gonna use that for the chicken in here. And then I have some brown rice that I just pulled out of the fridge and reheated. So you can make all that in advance and just keep it in the fridge. And then you'll pull out the rest of our ingredients and chop up some green onions, and it comes together so quickly. And we're gonna make this delicious creamy sauce for it using a little bit of Greek yogurt. I like to combine all of my seasonings in a little bowl. That way it's easy to take over to the stove. And I do a little bit of adobo chili powder, cumin, some garlic powder, and some dried oregano. This gives it really good flavor, almost like a taco seasoning. So now I have all my seasoning ready to go. I have my chopped up scallions, and I'm also pulling out some frozen corn. We just need about half a cup or so. But now I'm going to show you how I made that chicken in my Instant Pot earlier. And I actually doubled the amount of chicken I was using so I can use it in one of the other recipes I'm going to show you today. So I just added 4 chicken breasts in with a splash of chicken broth, maybe about 1/4 cup. And I'm going to pressure cook that on the poultry setting for about 20 minutes. That's just high pressure. And in the end, you should be able to take a fork and just really easily break that apart. And I also season it with a little bit of salt and pepper before I cook it. I grabbed one of my favorite dishes. It's a 3.5 quart casserole skillet. I'm drizzling in a little bit of avocado oil, and then I'm just gonna throw in the scallions and the seasoning mix and just toast those up for a second so they can start to get really flavorful, especially those onions. Then I go ahead and add the frozen corn and let that defrost. Once the frozen corn is defrosted, that's when I like to go ahead and add in that leftover brown rice. And then I'm also adding in 1 can of cannellini beans that I've drained and rinsed. And this really drives home that white chicken chili flavor and texture. Then I'm gonna add in that shredded chicken straight from my Instant Pot and stir it all together. And now we're gonna add the sauces that makes this oh so good. I'm adding in 2 4-ounce cans of mild diced green chilies. You want to make sure they're mild, that way it's not going to be spicy. And then I'm adding in some green enchilada sauce. And you can also use red, I just prefer the green, especially for a white chili. I'm adding in some diced tomatoes just for a little juiciness and some texture. And then I'm sprinkling in a handful of sharp cheddar cheese and seasoning it all with salt and pepper. And I'm going to mix that together. And then once that's heated through and that cheese is melted, I'm going to add in a scoop of whole milk plain Greek yogurt, and that's going to make it nice and creamy. You could also sub this for sour cream if that's what you have in your fridge. So I'll mix that all together, and then I'll sprinkle that remaining cheese on top to give it a nice cheesy crust. And I've preheated the oven to 350 degrees. And I'm going to put this pan straight into the oven, so you want to make sure you're using an oven-safe skillet. And we're just gonna let that cook for about 15 to 20 minutes until the cheese is bubbling and brown, and then I'll show you how to top it off. I love to chop up some scallions, some cilantro, and I'll sprinkle that over the top. You can also do some diced tomatoes, and then I love putting a few chips on the side for crunch. One of my favorite soups is chicken and wild rice soup, but I thought it would be really fun to recreate it and turn it into a casserole and make it even more delicious in my opinion. I think it's going to be amazing, and we're going to top it off with some buttery sourdough breadcrumbs, which just takes anything over the top. So I'm going to show you how to do it really easily. You can buy store-bought sourdough bread or make your own homemade artisan sourdough bread and use that as breadcrumbs. Any kind will do, and I'll show you how to do those later. But the first step to this casserole is you want to have cooked chicken and you want to have cooked wild rice. So I cooked my chicken earlier in the Instant Pot and shredded it, so that's already ready to go. And then I'm gonna go ahead and use my Instant Pot again and make the wild rice in it. And it's super quick and simple. So I have an organic wild rice blend here. I like to use a wild rice blend because I love the different kinds of rice that it has in it. So not only do you have like the black wild rice, but you have a little bit of white rice, some brown rice, and even red rice. And I think it just tastes so good. So you could go the traditional route and just use regular like black dark wild rice, but I love the blend. So to start with, I like to grease my Instant Pot liner with just a little bit of avocado oil spray, just to make sure that rice actually comes out and doesn't just stick in there. So just give it a little spritz. You could also rub it down with a little bit of butter. Grab some sort of fine mesh sieve, and I'm gonna measure out about 2 cups of our wild rice. So I'm gonna go ahead and use 2 cups of dry rice, and it'll puff up and make a whole lot more. So I'm gonna put 2 cups of rice into my sieve. We get stuck in eating brown rice and white rice all the time, so wild rice is just something different, and I love the nuttiness of it too. So I've got my rice in here, and I run some cold water over it and give it a nice rinse before we put it into the Instant Pot. So I've got my 2 cups and it's nice and rinsed, and I just let as much water run out as possible so that all the starch is kind of rinsed off before we put it in. And now I've got about 2 2/3 cups of cold filtered water, and I'm going to add that in along with a little pinch of salt. And then I'll just stir that up before I cook it. Seal it, and I'm going to pressure cook it on high for about 20 minutes and then let it release naturally for about 10 to 15 more minutes so that it's perfectly cooked and fluffy and ready to go for the casserole. This casserole is one of my favorites that I've been making over the past few weeks, and I'm so excited to share this with you because I think you're gonna love the revamped version of chicken and wild rice. So I've got my wild rice that's already cooked, and I've got some broth. I have some cutting celery I pulled from my garden, and I've got an onion along with some bella mushrooms, and I'm gonna start by just chopping up that celery. You want it to be nice and fine, and then same thing with the mushrooms. I wipe them down, and then I'll thinly slice those, and we'll get those ready to go into the pan, along with some Gruyere cheese that I'm shredding. I've got a cast iron skillet heated over medium-high heat, and I'm adding in those onions and the celery, season it with a little bit of salt, and we're gonna let that cook down for about 5 minutes until the onions are soft. Then I like to add in the mushrooms and let those saute for about 5 to 6 minutes more until the mushrooms are really soft and you can see nice golden bits. And in the meantime, I'm gonna show you how I make my sourdough breadcrumbs. So I cut the crust off of artisan crusty bread, and then I put it in the food processor, and I'll just pulse that up, and then you will have nice fine sourdough breadcrumbs. And I put it in a little plastic tub like this, and then I usually pop it in the freezer so I have breadcrumbs at any time. Now I've taken a couple tablespoons of butter and melted it, and now I'm tossing the breadcrumbs in that, so that way when they top our casserole and go into the oven, they're nice and toasty and buttery. Now we're gonna make the really nice creamy sauce for this, so I'm just scraping up all the bits off of my cast iron and sprinkling a little bit of flour over, and there's still butter in the pan, so it will just kind of coat the veggies, and that's perfectly fine. I'm gonna drizzle in some chicken stock and milk. You could also do half and half if you want it to be even creamier and richer, but I try not to go overboard with too much half and half in every recipe, even though I want to. So pour in the chicken stock and milk, whisking continuously. That way you get a nice smooth sauce, and just let that simmer for about 3 to 5 minutes until you can kind of get it to coat the back of your spoon. Once the sauce has started to thicken and simmering, I will go ahead and add in that shredded chicken from my Instant Pot, along with some shredded Gruyere cheese, and I'm gonna mix that all together until it is this delicious creamy sauce. Then I'll just fold in that wild rice. Once that mixture is the perfect consistency, I like to pour it into a greased 9x9 casserole dish, and I'll sprinkle over those buttery sourdough breadcrumbs, and then give it another sprinkle of Parmesan cheese, just about 1/4 cup. And then I'll put it in my preheated oven at 350, and we'll just let this bake for about 35 to 40 minutes or so until those breadcrumbs are golden and everything is bubbling. Then just sprinkle a little bit of parsley over the top for some freshness and some brightness, and you're ready to serve this dinner. And I tell you, this is one of my favorite cozy casseroles. You could make this for Thanksgiving and put it on the table, and it would be perfect. Anytime it's the fall or the winter or around the holidays, I love a breakfast casserole. There's lots of different sweet ones out there, but I want to show you one that is savory, and it has veggies in it, and so it's a nice balanced meal, but it is so yummy and just screams the holidays. So I'm starting by taking a big skillet and just browning some breakfast sausage. This one is actually kind of like a sage flavor, but you can use pretty much any breakfast sausage and it'll be fine here. And then I'm adding in some butter to my pan and scraping up all those little bits from the sausage, and that's what I'm going to use to saute some onion. I just thinly slice these, and I'm gonna put those in there with a little bit of salt. And once those are nice and soft and tender, I'm gonna add in 5 ounces of baby spinach. So adding something like this to a casserole is just gonna make you feel a whole lot better over the entire holiday season. I know whenever it's cozy cooking season, it turns into a lot of rich foods, but just adding in things like veggies makes such a huge difference. So go ahead and squeeze in as many veggies as you can. Okay, I've got my big old 9x13 pan here, and I'm so excited to share this one because it's so easy and it's amazing for a make-ahead breakfast or like a holiday breakfast. This is one you need to remember for the holiday season, and it is so fun and just something different, but it still has a lot in it, like veggies and meat, so you're actually gonna be filled and not just in a sugar coma. I'm gonna grease my dish here. I'm using a 9x13. I'm just gonna grease it with a little butter, or you could do avocado oil, but why not butter? Because it makes it delicious. Okay, so I'm gonna set this over here. Then I'm basically gonna just assemble everything. So I've got some scallions here that I've already chopped up. I'm gonna reserve some for topping, and then the ground sausage that I cooked up on the stove, and then all of those onions and spinach that we let wilt down and caramelize and get nice and yummy on the stove. I also have a few roasted red bell peppers, and I love these because when my red bell peppers aren't in season in the garden, I always have a jar of these in my fridge, and they have so much flavor to them because they're already roasted. It saves you time chopping, and it adds such a deep flavor because they're roasted, so it just amplifies that red bell pepper flavor, and it's delicious. Okay, so in this bowl, I'm gonna start by making kind of like the meaty filling. So we're gonna add our sausage that we already browned. Pop that in there. Then I'm also gonna add all of those onions and the spinach, which I'm using about 5 ounces of spinach, and it's amazing to me how much it wilts down. So if you're gonna use a little more and make it healthier, go right ahead. So that's already a delicious, yummy start. I have the star of the show, which are everything bagels. So I'm using like the organic ones that you can find at your grocery store, and they're everything, so much flavor in here. And so I'm gonna cut them into roughly 2-inch pieces. So I'll just cut them all in half. And I like to make sure that they're kind of stale. So like if they're a day or 2 old, that's better because we want it to kind of absorb the mixture but not get super soggy. So I just like to cut it in half once, and then I'll cut it into 3 sections so that each piece is about 2 inches or so. And that's gonna go straight into the meat and the onion and the spinach mixture. And if they kind of fall apart on you and start to separate, that's totally fine. Not a big deal. I'm gonna add those roasted red bell peppers. That just adds so much flavor. But if you don't have those on hand and you happen to have red bell pepper on hand, definitely go ahead and use those, that's fine. And then I'm gonna add in all of these scallions, and that just adds lots of fresh flavor. We already have the cooked onions that are a little sweeter, but then the scallions add kind of like that fresh bite that you love. So let's add that in, and then I'll season it with some salt, not too much, and a little pepper. Oh, this is so good. And I love the green and the red. It just gets me in the spirit. So now we'll toss everything together here. Oh, I mean, this looks good just on its own. And I love that it has all the major food groups. You've got carbs, you've got meat, you've got all your different veggies. So it's really a well-rounded breakfast, but still really fun. Okay, so that is beautiful. You can see how gorgeous this mixture is. I love the colors. I'm gonna grab my big greased baking dish. And the trick with recipes like this is that you're gonna make the filling, and then we're gonna make kind of like a custard, but you wanna let it sit in the fridge for at least a couple of hours. I try to do normally like 2 to 6 hours, but overnight is really great too. And that way you can make it ahead and then just bake it off in the morning, and it's nice and fresh. Okay, so just kind of arrange those bagels in there. That way when you dig into it, everybody gets a little scoop of bagel, sausage, and all the different stuff. Kind of make it fit in there. It's like a savory bread pudding. I love it. That part's done, a nice beautiful filling. I'm gonna set it over here. So in my bowl, I've already cracked in 8 eggs and added just some salt and some pepper. And then you could either do Dijon mustard, or since I guess I'm just not sophisticated enough for it, instead of Dijon, I love a good honey mustard. So I'm gonna add just a teaspoon or 2 of honey mustard. And I love mustards in all kinds of egg bakes. It just adds such good flavor. And I've got about 2 cups of half and half, which is just gonna make this into a nice rich custard. You can also just use whole milk if you want it to be a little bit lighter, but I love it, and it's so filling for breakfast, so it's perfect. Now I'm also gonna add in some cheese. I just grated this a minute ago. Put it in a container. Now you can use any kind of cheese you want, but I love just a classic cheddar, and I actually think it goes really well with the everything bagel. It kind of cuts through it and gives you like that classic breakfast taste. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in some of our cheese into the mixture, and then we'll save some for the top. Grab my dough whisk, which is my favorite because then all the cheese doesn't get stuck. You can mix it up really well. And the cheese in this container, I'm actually gonna keep in here. And then after this is all set in the fridge and we're ready to bake it, I'll add the cheese on then and cover it with a little bit of foil so it doesn't get brown too quickly, and you end up with a nice, delicious, gooey cheese bite. So I'm gonna save that for now. And now I'm just gonna pour this custard all over the top of this. Yum! I cannot wait to eat this. I love these kind of breakfasts. They're just so hearty and filling and delicious. Just really gets you going for the day, that's for sure. Okay, so my last little trick that makes this really decadent and delicious, I have half a brick of cream cheese that's really cold because we're gonna cut it into little cubes. And I'm just gonna make enough cubes to dot along the top, and it makes it creamy, and you get that hint of cream cheese that goes amazing with the bagel. Don't ask me, just try it. It's so delicious. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit of cream cheese. Doesn't have to be very perfect. We're just gonna make rough little dots all over the top. And if you have a local bagel shop that you love, get some of their bagels. Get their day-old bagels if you can. You can usually even get them on sale, but you could use any sort of flavor here. You could use a cranberry orange bagel, you could use an onion bagel, whatever kind you want. You can really mix it up in here and just make it so unique. This is definitely a crowd pleaser. I mean, you can't go wrong with these flavors. It's gonna be amazing. Okay, so I have all my little dots of cream cheese all over the top, and I'm gonna go ahead and sprinkle it with those green onions just to make it even more beautiful and flavorful. Now the final touch, just to add a little bit more oomph and really drive home that everything bagel, is a little bit of everything bagel seasoning. You can find this at the store or make it yourself just using different seasonings. And I'm just gonna sprinkle about a tablespoon or so right over the top. And it's gonna give it more color, more crunch, and a little bit of saltiness, and just, oh, you know exactly what you're getting into between the cream cheese and that everything bagel. This is a winner. Okay, I'm gonna cover this with a little bit of plastic wrap. I'm gonna put it in the fridge for just a couple of hours because I wanna bake it off so I can show you how delicious this one is. I hope that you enjoyed coming along as we made some of my favorite casseroles. These are so good. You're gonna forget about the takeout. Takeout is canceled. These are so much better, so I hope that you'll try them out and make them for your friends and family. I will leave the recipes down below in the description box so you can come back here and visit them. Let me know if you try any of these, and make sure you catch up on my other videos here, and I will be back again with a new one real soon. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen.